Oh, baby, we got a packed show. You already know what time it is. Welcome back into the NFL with AJL, episode 90. We are live on a Tuesday night. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're right here, tapped in with us on the show. It's a little bit snowy, a lot of bit snowy over here in Georgia. So if you're on the southeast side, hope you're staying safe in the snow. If you're on the west coast, possibly experiencing some of the tragedies with the wildfires, I'm praying hardcore for you guys. Keep safe over there as well. Again, you could have been anywhere else, but you're tapped in with me here on episode 90 tonight. And like I said, we got an absolutely packed one. But as always, before we get started, y'all make sure to jump in the comments, get in the chat, like and share the stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube. We have officially hit 1,000 subscribers, and it's because of you guys. Could not appreciate y'all more. Let's keep it running up. Let's get to 1,100, 1,200. Go ahead and push to the 2,000 subs, because now we have officially been able to unlock the full monetization from YouTube. Of course, that QR code is every bit of social media and podcast content. The link tree is down in the description below as well. Shout out to my editor, Felix. We have been getting back on the reels, on the short videos. So if you've been liking, sharing, engaging with those, I super duper appreciate you guys. It is a cold one over here in Georgia, but that's not going to stop us from having an absolutely packed show. Ohio State crushes, yes, crushes Notre Dame. Ben Johnson is hired as head coach to the Chicago Bears, recapping the divisional round of the NFL, a little bit of a coaching update on the New Orleans Saints search, and much more. I want to see you guys in the chat. I want to see y'all in the comments. Again, packed show tonight. Share the stream, tell a friend, follow us on all social media platforms. Not going to waste any more of your time. We're going to go ahead and jump right into the national championship recap as Ohio State crushes. Yes, you heard me correctly. They crush Notre Dame, and the score doesn't show it, 34-23. We know Notre Dame makes a little bit of a comeback at the end. They're finally able to force a turnover, get themselves back into this game. And my predictions coming into this one were very, very simple. It was going to be a battle of defenses, which it was to an extent. I think Ohio State definitely took the cake there. Good quarterback battle that I think Will Howard absolutely won. An elite coaching matchup to where it felt like Ryan Day was the elite one here. Marcus Freeman kind of, the moment's too big for him. Is he able to adjust? Notre Dame's able to survive the fourth quarter, but they give up a 21-point second quarter. And both teams had to establish the run. One did, the national champions, and one did not. The losers in the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Yes, 1,000 subs, baby. Thank you so much for jumping in the chat. I've been grinding to get here. 842 videos later, we are at 1,000 subs on YouTube. But let's get into the actual recap of this game. Like I said, those are kind of my predictions coming in. And, Notre Dame came out with a steady dose of Riley Leonard between his runs, kind of moving him outside of the pocket. But I saw it early on. Riley Leonard was staring down his receivers very badly, kind of struggling to go through his progressions. And Ohio State was going to pick up on that, and they eventually did. But we knew Ohio State's run defense was really going to be tested in this one early on. Notre Dame came out, chewed him up. 13 carries for 44 yards, 9 carries for Riley Leonard. Of course, he has a touchdown. They come out on an 18-play, 75-yard drive, chewing almost 10 minutes of clock. And that was really the recipe for Notre Dame to be able to win this football game. But they weren't able to keep that up all night. They had to keep Ohio State off the field, which they did not. And Ohio State comes out in this one quickly, and they're trailing for the first time all postseason. And when you look at the time of possession, yes, Ohio State does win it by 5 minutes, but it felt like they held the football much longer in this game. It's surprising that they lose the turnover battle and still come away with a dominant performance. Ohio State with 445 total yards of offense, over 200 yards rushing. And when you look at the fact that Notre Dame only had 53 rushing yards, they had 44 rushing yards on the first drive. Now, yes, the rushing yards do get taken away when you take sacks in college, and I think in the NFL is, or no, that takes away from your net passing yards. So you're telling me Notre Dame came out and had 9 rushing yards through the final 50 minutes of that football game. That's exactly why they lost. They were not able to establish any sort of run game. And like I said in the predictions, the team who established the run dominated, and the team who wasn't able to had a very vanilla offense for most of this game were the losers. I thought Ohio State had a really elite defensive stand on Notre Dame's second drive, really adjusting, dropping 8 into coverage, getting pressure with 3, which is not easy. Ohio State controls that drive. They made adjustments, and they really locked it down on Notre Dame. And when you looked at how both teams scored, first and foremost, Notre Dame's drive looked difficult, very methodical. They didn't really march down the field, even though they did go down and score on the first drive, while Ohio State took half the time, and they marched down the field. They scored quickly in 5 minutes. And Will Howard just looked so confident in this game. Again, I feel like he gets better, week after week. Some people said he didn't look too great in the Texas game, and obviously in the Michigan game, the Nebraska game, it was it was a struggle as well. But he was delivering the ball, had some major scrambles, kind of channeling some inner Riley Leonard. And this Ohio State wide receiver room was really starting to heat up, whether it was Tate, whether it was Ibuka, whether it was Jeremiah Smith, who was already NFL ready. But, outside of a couple of stuff runs from Notre Dame, that Notre Dame defense didn't come to make anything difficult for Ohio State until they forced the turnover later in the game, which is what they needed to kind of get back into it. I hope my mic is not too low. For some reason, it likes to pop lower on the volume. Not like you guys can't hear me, right? It took Ohio State. Here's kind of the perspective of the game to show you how different the offenses and really the approaches were. It took Ohio State 1 minute longer on 2 total drives to score their first 2 touchdowns. Then it took Notre Dame to score 1. It took Ohio State 11 minutes to score twice. It took Notre Dame 9 minutes and 45 seconds and a heavy dose of Riley Leonard. He's going to the sideline, throwing up, trying to catch his breath after the first drive to score their first touchdown. And Notre Dame's offense had just died in this game after that. It was uncreative, 3 and outs. Ohio State caught on to it, and they weren't letting up. They were putting their foot on the throat, so it felt like, until Notre Dame got that turnover later in the game. I mean, with 2 minutes to go in the first half, Will Howard is 11 for 11, over 100 yards. He's got a touchdown. Notre Dame just couldn't keep up. And again, up until the point of when they scored forced the turnover, they are winless. Only loss was against NIU. Northern Illinois, when they don't force a turnover. And, this was really the game. If Ohio State was able to score before the half, they get the ball back after the half, they go up 21-7. It could have been possibly 17-7 if they kicked the field goal. That was just going to be a really tall task for Notre Dame. And then they made it 28-7. So it all but felt like the game was actually over. And all of these Ohio State wide receivers were pretty open for most of this game. And if not, a lot of the first half. Where the hell was that Notre Dame secondary? I really didn't understand where that Notre Dame defense was, because they did not come to play for majorities of this game. And they were outcoached. They were outplayed. Marcus Freeman's moment was too big for him. And I understand you had 7 wins against ranked AP opponents, but the Notre Dame secondary wasn't acting like that. Marcus Freeman wasn't acting like that. The Fighting Irish were not playing that brand of football. Will Howard continued to make great plays in this game, dropping it in the bucket to Henderson. Again, multiple scrambles, looking like Riley Leonard out there. You go into the first, you go into halftime. Notre Dame had 18 yards of offense. That's their first touchdown drive. Jeremiah Love had 3 carries for 1 yard. They were giving up 7 yards per play, allowing a 21-point second quarter, touchdowns on all 3 drives, and they allowed Will Howard to have the highest first half CFP completion percentage in the history of the CFP. So it was kind of getting historically bad here for Notre Dame. Judkins seemed like he was going to ice the game on the second play of the second half. Now you had 4 drives, 4 touchdowns, and Ohio State just kept marching down the field quicker, easier, each and every drive. Notre Dame did not have any first downs since their first drive up until the point where they finally did get one in the third quarter. They went for 18 plays, 75 yards, up until they were able to get early into the third quarter. They had 9 plays for 20 yards after that point. So Ohio State was just absolutely dominating, clearly looking like the best defense in the country, as we know that they've come to be. And you got to respect Ohio State's defense too. I mean, knowing that Riley Leonard is an absolute weapon, they're, just daring him to run. And Riley looked timid. He looked very uneasy in the pocket, having to make his reads. And respectfully, he's just not that type of quarterback. I understand he pulled it out at the end of the game and had some drives, but Ohio State was letting up. Ohio State's defense was starting to get a little tired from those longer drives that Notre Dame was able to be piecing together. Defense was kind of getting back out there quicker because Ohio State's offense was getting a little conservative. And, Notre Dame just looked desperate when they ran that fake punt. I mean, it was vanilla. It was just run game and defense. And both of those weren't even really operating at this point. Ohio State was pretty disciplined in this game as well. They had no flags on them until halfway through the third quarter. So that was very impressive. And, when you see this game playing out, Notre Dame clearly unleashed the entire playbook on the first drive, which is pretty sad to say because it wasn't an impressive first drive, even though they did go down and score. It took you almost 10 minutes. You had 9 rushes on an 18-play drive. No, you had 13 carries, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, you had 13 carries on an 18-play drive. So it's clear you're not trusting Riley Leonard to put the ball in the air, and that's okay. That's your identity. But Notre Dame fans need to accept that. People watching the sport need to understand that Riley Leonard is not a special quarterback. He's a great competitor, but he shrunk in this game. And I kind of saw it coming. I said also in the prediction, if you saw it, how can Notre Dame win the national championship? Riley Leonard has to be able to make more than just plays with his legs. And he wasn't set up for success for that. Now, he did start getting some passes going with Greathouse. Obviously, it was a real connection there that was becoming a problem for Ohio State. Great House able to score a couple of touchdowns, which was really great. But Notre Dame wasn't fooling anybody. It felt like there was nothing left, no creativity. Notre Dame fans just had to be sick at this point, knowing that they got all the way to the Natty, and it was going to play out this way. So, after, scoring the touchdown, Notre Dame gets that turnover that they so desperately needed. They get right back in the game. 158 points off turnovers is the most in the last decade in the sport. Riley's now kind of proving me wrong, converting on third down, converting on fourth down, throwing zone shots to get the team back in it. And Ohio State secondary had three flags on drives, really helping out Notre Dame. So you have to ask the question of, was Notre Dame really doing anything? I guess it's automatically adjusting down when I talking about my mic. Was Notre Dame really doing anything special? Or was it just the fact that Ohio State's defense was getting some flags on them later in the game? Again, the secondary with 3 flags on them. And when Notre Dame missed that field goal towards the end, now I'm thinking they have to touch the ball twice more without Ohio State scoring. If they would have scored the touchdown, it could have made it a 13-point game. If they would have hit the field goal, it would have made it a 13-point game, which means they got to get the ball back twice instead of once if you score the touchdown and hit the 2-point. It was a great way to stall out Ohio State as well. Notre Dame later on in this one, Riley Leonard delivering a strike for the score in the end zone, along with the Philly special for the 2-point. Just you really felt the momentum kind of coming over to them. And again, Ohio State let this one slip away a little bit. You guys heard it in my reel that I posted. They almost turned into the damn Atlanta Falcons. It was from 31-7 to 31-23, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and then Ohio State gets the field goal to win it. They were too conservative with the lead. There were too many run plays, low percentage pass plays. Notre Dame just started to pin their ears back and adjust. I mean, there's quarterback keepers, and shout out Marcus Freeman for at least giving his team a little bit of a shot at the end. But the reason I say Notre Dame got crushed is because they did. It was too little, too late. This was a 31-7 game. This was a 21-point second quarter. They survived the first quarter, but they didn't survive the second quarter. Of course, Jeremiah Smith comes out, arguably the best wide receiver in college football, even though he's a freshman. He puts the game away on a 56-yard grab, and there you have your 2025 national champions in the Ohio State Buckeyes, and they absolutely deserved it. They were the best team in college football from the moment that they stepped into the playoffs, blowing out Tennessee, blowing out Oregon. I was trying to remember. They beat Oregon by as many as they did, Tennessee, Texas. They played Oregon again earlier in the season, and I'm trying to remember an exact tweet that I saw. Let me see if I can go back and find it, because I told the guy on Twitter to calm down a little bit. Let me see. I said slow down just a little bit. They were saying it was the most dominant season in college football history. I think I'm going to have it right here. Hold on. Here we go. Ohio State beat number 1 Oregon by 20, number 3 Texas by 14, number 3 Penn State by 7, number 5 Notre Dame by 11, number 5 Indiana by 23, and number 7 Tennessee by 25. Not the most dominant season in college football history. I still think 2019 LSU really is going to beat anybody like a drum, because that is the best college football team we've ever seen. But I'm giving all the credit to Ohio State. They're favored to win it all next year, and rightfully so they should be. Who's going to be the quarterback? We know that wide receiver room is going to come back. We know that running back room is possibly going to come back as well, barring that the transfer portal doesn't get crazy. And why would they want to transfer out? They just want it all. So shout out to Ryan Day for getting the monkey off of his back. Ohio State was the national champions when they first went to the CFP with the 4 teams. Now they are the first national champions when they expand the CFP to the 12 teams. And this is going to be a great team to watch for years to come. Expect them to be in much more national championships, because this program has reached the pinnacle. And nobody deserved it more than the Ohio State Buckeyes. They willed their way to this game, and it was never in doubt that once they beat Oregon, they were the best team left in college football. And I say that as a Bulldogs fan. As a delusional Bulldogs fan, I knew Ohio State, once they tapped Oregon, it was over. They destroyed the number 1 undefeated seed. It was over. And Ryan Day left out in nobody's mind, maybe a little bit, because of how they kind of slipped on the conservativeness in the game. But I just want to give some of my overall thoughts on the first ever 12-team format now that the college football season has officially concluded. First and foremost, best college football season ever. Without question. I watched probably 95% college this year and 5% NFL. And the name of my channel is the NFL with AJL. That doesn't mean that I wasn't tapped in on the league, the National Football League, but college football just kept me coming back to the screen. I mean, the home matchups, the fact that my team played the toughest schedule this year and still prevailed, the fact that Alabama had to go through some adjustments, the fact that Miami made it come around. We see Florida State fall off. We see Vanderbilt kind of making a push. And there's a lot of things that you could throw into this, but it was just so exciting overall. And I'm glad that it's here. I'm super glad that we get to experience this all over again next year. And some people are asking for adjustments, right? They want some adjustments made to the potential 12-team playoffs. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that because of everything that's been happening and just how great it was. I think the only adjustments I would possibly make was that the seeding needs to be fixed. Possibly seed the field as it is, because the reward for Oregon winning their conference championship, going undefeated, and getting the number 1 seed was facing the hardest side of the bracket. They were going to have to beat Clemson or Texas or Arizona State or Tennessee, or not Tennessee, or Ohio State. Like, they had the tough side of the bracket for sure. And that was their reward for going undefeated? No. You take the highest seed and they play the lowest seed. So you weed out the bad teams, or the teams that just barely scraped in. That's kind of your penalty for just scraping into the playoffs, is you have to play the best. The reward for being the best is getting to play the lower seed. You save the best teams for later. So you don't have a Bills-Ravens divisional matchup, or some of these other matchups we've seen in the NFL where they've gotten it right because of the seeding, but we get a game that we feel like should be possibly, Super Bowl worthy, championship, title championship game worthy. Talking about AFC championship, NFC championship. So I do think that they could fix the seeding, and home playoff games are so legit. I mean, I would love for it to go all the way through the playoffs at home like the NFL, and then obviously the very last game of the year is the national championship. I've seen a lot of people saying that the Rose Bowl should also be the national championship. I couldn't disagree more. I think the Rose Bowl, being the granddaddy of them all, next year being the 112th game, is just absolutely special. I mean, it being out there in Pasadena, it is a privilege. It is an honor. It is a specialty, a great, momentous occasion to play in the Rose Bowl. So let it be a standalone. I can understand the bowl games coming in: Fiesta Bowl, Peach Bowl, Sugar Bowl, everything that we saw in the semis, the quarterfinals, and then, the final game is the national championship. I would like to see home games all the way through the conference, the semifinals like we see in the NFL, but there's too much money in the bowl games, and we know. Excuse me, had to take a sip of liquid death. We know that can't happen. We absolutely know that can't happen. But I want y'all to get in the chat, get in the comments on YouTube, on Facebook, Rumble, LinkedIn, wherever you find this video. Let me know your overall thoughts on the first ever 12-team playoff format. What changes would you possibly make? And what were your takeaways on the national championship game? Because it was a great one to watch. It absolutely was. From snap to snap, I was glued. Let's give a little bit of an update. Now switching over to mostly NFL. Really, the rest of the show is going to be NFL. I want to give you an update on the New Orleans Saints head coaching search. We're having some second interviews with Anthony Weaver, who is the defensive coordinator of the Dolphins. Couldn't be more disinterested. And weirdly the hell enough, we pay for a flight for Mike Kafka to come over to New Orleans to interview second time, also like Anthony Weaver, for our head coaching position. I couldn't be even more disinterested in Mike Kafka because he's coming from New York. I guess if I had to pick one of the two, pick your poison, which evil would you prefer? I would take Anthony Weaver because he has much better resume from a much more stable franchise. I don't think anybody would want to touch anything coming out of the New York Giants franchise. But with Anthony Weaver in his only season with Miami, he was 10th in points, 4th in yards, 9th in pass and rush defensive yards as well. They weren't great in turnovers. They were -5 in the turnover margin, which is 21st in the NFL. They were 6th worst in the league with total turnovers at only 16. And again, being -5 in the turnover margin, that means you turn the ball over offensively 21 times, but your defense only came away with 16 of them. That's not the worst thing in the world. You do want to have a good defense be able to force turnovers like you see with the Eagles, like you see with the Chiefs, like you see with the Bills. And again, in his only season, he gave you a top 10 team in points, yards, and passing yards allowed by the defense and rushing yards allowed by the defense. So he had a good tenure. But then when you look at Mike Kafka, who since 2022, he's been the offensive coordinator for the Giants. He's went 1-1 in the playoffs with them. He's been 15th, 30th, and 31st in points. Now, I understand he's been working with a Daniel Jones, working with a Tommy DeVito, working with a Drew Lock. I don't care, because his resume is what it is. And if you think for some weird freaking reason you're going to get more out of Spencer Rattler or maybe Jake Haener or, God forbid, Derek Carr's QB1 next year, which he probably is, check the tape, Derek. I'm not interested in that. I don't believe in that at all. And then you look, he was 18th, 29th, and 30th in yards. So on average, he gave you the 25th best offense, 7th worst in the NFL in points and yards on average in those three seasons that he was there. So I couldn't be more disinterested in either of these guys. Again, if I had to pick my poison, I would take Anthony Weaver. We're still crossing our fingers for Joe Brady over here in New Orleans. For the love of God, please just give us somebody offensive. Just give us an offensive coach. I mean, yeah, I would still welcome Aaron Glenn because he ironically left the building today of the Jets with no deal. And now he'll apparently visit the Saints. But with him just giving up 45 points at home to the Commanders, which I'm not sliding Washington, it changes your perspective on his resume a little bit. So again, take me back to the offensive guy. Take me back to the guy who has done great with Josh Allen since taking over for Ken Dorsey. Joe Brady is phenomenal. And you even see Josh Allen defending him. Joe Brady's not doing anything well here. Teams need to stay away from him. He's obviously being very coy about the subject. But Joe Brady is a great candidate because we know what he's able to do offensively. But is he in it for the hardest coaching job in the NFL? Because you have 5 players over the age of 32 accumulating for over $100 million, over $110 million next year in cap hits. Derek Carr, Tyrann Mathieu, Demario Davis, Cameron Jordan. It's tough. It's very, very tough. Is Joe Brady the guy to weather that rebuild? And then we have rumors about Mike McCarthy heating up, which I was shitting on it first. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong at all. I could want anything besides Mike McCarthy, right? But let's keep it logical here for a second. Mike McCarthy is not a bad coach. And I actually want to be able to pull up, I just had it right here. Here we go. Mike McCarthy is not a horrible coach. Yes, you might feel indifferent about what he did towards the end of his tenure in Green Bay. Let's not forget that Aaron Rodgers is difficult to put up with. Let's not forget that Aaron Rodgers did have a shoulder injury. And it kind of felt like he was wrongfully fired in the middle of a 4-7 season after leading them to a Super Bowl in 2010. Out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 seasons with the Green Bay Packers. He gave them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 double-digit win seasons. And he only had 1, 2, 3 losing seasons out of over a decade. Again, 13 years with the Cowboys. Or not the Cowboys, the Packers. So, you could say what you want about him, but he's a mature coach. He's 61, going to be turning 62. So he's seen plenty of what this league has to offer. Coached in well over 200, coming up on 300 NFL games. In his 18 years as a coach, he's coached 288 games. He's won 174, lost 112, 2 ties. So a 60.8 rounded up to 61% winning percentage. He's been to the playoffs quite a few times, 22 playoff games. Matter of fact, out of the 18 years that he's been a coach, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times has he missed the playoffs with his teams. 2006, the first year with Green Bay, he goes 8-8. The third year with Green Bay when he goes 6-10. He missed it for 2 straight years with Green Bay. I'm pretty sure those were the years that Aaron Rodgers wasn't looking too good. 7-9, 4-7. The first year with Dallas, he goes 6-10 because they finally get Jason Garrett the hell out of there. And then 3 straight 12-win seasons. He's 11-11 in the playoffs. Again, 22 games coached, a 500 winning percentage. Now, I'm not saying he's the end-all, be-all, but I feel like if the Saints are just looking for stability and competency, Mike McCarthy is not a bad option. And I firmly believe the coach that comes in this year, he's probably going to be a 1-year, 2-year scapegoat. This is a 2-year rebuild, like at quickest. I don't think we're going to get lucky like the Bengals or the Commanders or be as hot as the Lions were over these last couple of seasons with Dan Quinn just absolutely commandeering them. But Mike McCarthy might be the most qualified, experienced, well-rounded NFL coach that could be interested in coming to coach for us. Because again, just does Joe Brady, can he weather the storm? Because this is like Winter Storm Enzo that we're experiencing right now, but times 10 with New Orleans. Worst cap situation in the league, most passive owner out there, dumbest GM in the league, who is so oblivious and in over his skis, just doesn't know football. His 45-minute press conference was grueling to listen to as a diehard fan. And you don't know what the quarterback situation is. You don't have trenches. Your roster is old. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Matt Moscona on After Further Review, Saints podcast, radio show, #1 radio talk show in New Orleans about the Saints. Love you, Scone. You do great work. He broke it down very well. It's not an attractive job. This is a 2, probably 3-year rebuild. And as long as Mickey Dumbass Loomis is in the building, it could be a 5+ year rebuild. We should have started rebuilding as soon as Breeze retired. Now, yes, you can argue Breeze should have went after 18, 19, 2017, whatever. He didn't until he went. And we could have been rebuilt. We could be back in contention. We could have a quarterback of the future. But Mickey loves to kick the can down the road, and that's why I can't have him anywhere near this rebuild. I'm not going to continue to go over Mickey Loomis because y'all know very well how I feel about him, and we know how the rest of the league feels about him as well. But Mike McCarthy could be a very decent hire. I'm not saying he's going to take us to the promised land. I'm not saying he's going to take us to the playoffs. I'm not saying we're going to go to the NFC Championship game. I'm not saying we're going to be one play away from possibly going because we're in the divisional. No. I just want stability and experience. And Mike McCarthy brings both of those to the table. Saints fans, I generally want to hear what you think down in the comments. Darby, I see you here. I'll definitely respond to that comment. They got it right. Don't know what you're referring to there, Brian, on they got it right. But either way, we'll see. You're probably talking about the you guys are talking about the college football playoffs. Yeah, they did get it right for the most part, for sure. I want them to change up a little bit of the, incentivization of the conference championship games. Much better than the 4 teams, for sure. Awesome. Supposedly, Kafka was going to be Bieniemy's replacement in Kansas City, but that didn't work out, so then he went to the Giants. Okay. I don't even know what to say to that. I'm just going to sip my liquid death and act like we're not going to hire Mike Kafka. By the way, Liquid Death, pretty good. I thought it was an energy drink / alcohol for the longest time. Apparently, it used to be an energy drink. This is the severed lime flavor. I do not have a sponsorship with these folks. Liquid Death, bring the check. I'd love to help out. Only thing is, it does have sugar in it. It has sugar in sparkling water, so I don't know how I feel about that. But get you a Tall Boy sparkling water, Liquid Death, and no code AJL at checkout. Again, we don't have the sponsorship yet. But hey, DM Liquid Death on social media. Get at them. Let them know that I'll be a great sponsor for them. So, yes, that's kind of the update on the New Orleans Saints head coaching search. I want to hear y'all get down in the comments, get in the chat about it. Who do you want, Saints fans? Do you want Joe Brady? Are you okay with Mike McCarthy? Because I'm not. I would argue Mike McCarthy is the strongest candidate right now. We didn't get Ben Johnson, who we're talking about next. Mike Vrabel is with the Patriots. I don't want Nagy. Cliff's not leaving because of what Commanders just did. Obviously, they have a second interview with Anthony Weaver. Aaron Glenn. His defense just gave up 45 points. So, yeah, I will say that right now, my top 2 picks are Mike McCarthy first and then Joe Brady. I'm not happy about it. Don't get me wrong. I do not think that Mike McCarthy's the solution, but you're getting a well-tenured head coach. The only down years he had in Dallas was when his quarterback was hurt. Now, are the playoffs a different story? Yes. I'm not thinking playoffs right now. I'm thinking get me the fuck out of this cap situation, help me build the trenches, help me draft, and help me look at my quarterback of the future. And I believe Mike McCarthy can possibly do that for us. Ben Johnson has officially been hired by the Chicago Bears as their next head coach. I want to say he's the 20th head coach in a little over 100 years of the existence, which is crazy. They have a new head coach every 5 years. If Joe Brady goes somewhere else, I really don't care because they're a 1 to 2 year scapegoat. Yeah, precisely. And I think if Mike McCarthy possibly proves himself, maybe gets us to the point of into the playoffs, but maybe he's the continuous one and done like he's been because I think the Super Bowl days are past him. He's still solid, and I do believe that we could maybe pivot from Mike to someone even stronger to really take us back to contention and, like we were when it was the Breeze and the Peyton era, for sure. But yes, Ben Johnson has officially been hired by the Chicago Bears as their head coach. And first and foremost, Lion fans, I got something to say to you. Y'all are acting like absolute freaking losers right now. Do you realize that? You're channeling your 0-16 vibes. You're channeling the fact that you haven't won a playoff game in 30 years before last season. Do you realize that? You're not doing your team a great service at all. Lions fans are pissed that he went to a division opponent. Get the hell over it. He went to a place that was the most attractive. Cap space. Generational quarterback in Caleb Williams. DeAndre Swift. Some of those players on the defense. The linebacker room. I can keep going. Lions fans, you look pathetic complaining about this. Oh, he bailed on the team. He didn't have his heart in it due to him knowing he was taking the Bears job. Shut the hell up, please. Please. You're acting like a loser. Seriously. You knew that he was going to leave. This year was Super Bowl or bust. You blew a 17-point lead in the NFC Championship game last year. Your defensive coordinator gave up 45 points at home this year as an 8.5-point favorite. So you don't get to escape the criticism. It's on you. Look in the mirror. Acting like the biggest losers I've ever seen here lately. I mean, the audacity to know that Ben Johnson played a pivotal role in helping you get to where you are. And you're going to trash the man? You got a hater for life in me. Roll your ass on down the hill, man. Genuinely. Come on. Have some appreciation for the guy. I mean, are we just going to overlook the fact that in 2022, the Lions were 5th in points per game? In 2023, the Lions were 5th in points per game. And this year, they were 1st in points per game. In 2022, they were 4th in yards. In 2023, they were 3rd in yards. This year, they were 2nd in yards. So Ben Johnson, from day one, averaged you a top 3 offense in both aspects with 3 years in Detroit. And you're going to say that you got a hater for life. Y'all are sickening. Y'all are acting absolutely sickening right now. And the fan base should be ashamed of themselves. Absolutely ashamed. It's ridiculous. Give the man some respect. Be happy for the fact that he is a head coach now, and he damn sure earned that job. Go beat him twice a year if you're mad about it. Guess what? You won't. You're going to split the division because Ben Johnson knows your offense. I mean, do we want to take into account the fact that in 2022, the Lions finished 4th in red zone efficiency? From 2022 to 2024, the Lions averaged 258 passing yards per game, which was the best in the NFL. In 2022, the Lions offense had a red zone touchdown percentage of 67%, which was 1st. This past year, you set franchise records for total net yards, points, touchdowns, and point differential. But you got a hater in life for me. It's pathetic. I'll say it once. I'll say it again. Pathetic, pretentious, conceited, selfish. Act like you've been here before. Oh, wait, you fucking haven't. So remove yourself a little bit from being so jaded, Lions fans. Y'all are sickening me on social media. Now let's get some emotion out of the window and some logic back into here. How is he going to mesh with Caleb Williams? I think he's going to do great with Caleb. Because are we also going to forget, here I go again, are we also going to forget that Ben Johnson made Jared Goff arguably a better quarterback in Detroit, where he was sent to die after the trade, than he did when he was with the Rams? I mean, seriously, are we going to deny that? Jared Goff was not supposed to be good. You send Eberflus out the window, ironically, to the Bears. Offensive coordinator goes to coach for the Bears. And then the offensive coordinator goes to coach for the Bears again. I want to fact check myself on that. I feel like I'm absolutely correct, but I just want to be sure. Matt Eberflus. No, excuse me. That was the Colts defensive coordinator, and then he became the Chicago Bears head coach. So please excuse my ignorance there. He was not with the Lions. He's actually never coached for the Lions. But either way, are we going to forget that Ben Johnson really helped Jared Goff lead a top 3 offense for the last 3 years? We're going to forget that? I didn't think so. So I think he'll do very well with Caleb Williams. I really do. I think that Caleb Williams needs a guy like Ben Johnson. Caleb Williams needs a Cliff Kingsbury type guy, a Shane Steichen type guy, speaking of the Colts. I really do think that. And Caleb didn't look good under Eberflus. Caleb didn't look good. Who's the offensive coordinator for the Bears? Bears offensive coordinator. Where Bears OC over the years? I'm just drawing a blank on who it was. Luke Getsy. Not looking good. And just a bunch of other no names before that. Maybe most notably, you can say Adam Gase. But I think he'll mesh well with Caleb. This is what the Bears need. Offensive-minded guys. Ben Johnson was the hottest candidate on the market. And he went to the best situation. You weren't going to go to the Raiders just because Tom Brady's going to make some decisions there. Yeah, his expertise could matter, but he's a partial owner. He's not an owner. He's not a GM. Yes, he can influence other people, but he's not calling shots. You're going to go to the Jets with a dwindling Aaron Rodgers who might do ayahuasca this summer? Are you going to go to the Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence, who's on the verge of being a bust? Or are you going to go with a valuable rookie quarterback contract with a lot of money to spend and ride in the division to piss off the team that you just left? That's kind of how it feels. Caleb is a solid quarterback, and I think Ben Johnson is going to get him to top 12 status this coming year. I really do. The Bears will probably have a top 10 offense going into next year. Ben Johnson's going to be very influential in the draft. He's going to be influential in free agency. He's an offensive guru. Again, if he can do what he did with Jared Goff after LA sent him there to die because Sean McVay said, I can't win with this guy, which is crazy. We're going to talk about the whole Jared Goff thing here when we review the game. But if he can do what he did with Goff, why can't he do it with Caleb? Caleb's special, number one pick, just like Goff was. You see the similarities now? You see why it's going to be a nice marriage, a nice relationship here? So I think he'll mesh well with Caleb. I think he'll get Caleb out of taking some sacks as much as he does. He's going to help beef up that offensive line. I don't see any negatives for Ben Johnson other than the fact that Lions fans are acting like absolute buffoons because of it. He built a great offense in Detroit. They went 2-2 in the playoffs. Again, fifth, and first overall in points in his 3 years. Fourth, third, and second in his yards in 3 years. Overall with the Bears, though, in their first season with Ben Johnson, I think they're going to go 8-9. Roughly, I do. I think they still have a top offense, but their schedule's not easy next year. I'll give them credit enough to split the division. They'll go 3-3. But outside of that, I mean, here's their opponents. No schedule up to their opponents. Twice against the Lions, Packers, and Vikings. I think they'll split all that. Home against the Cowboys, the Giants, the Browns, the Steelers, and the Saints. I think they'll lose to the Cowboys. I think they'll beat the Giants and the Browns. I think they'll lose to the Steelers, and I think they'll beat the Saints. So it's going to be about a 500 record at home. Now on the road, Detroit, Green Bay, Minnesota, of course. Baltimore on the road, the Bengals on the road, both losses. Vegas on the road, that's a win. Philly on the road, L. San Francisco on the road, L. And Washington on the road, L. It's not an easy schedule next year. The strength of schedule is not out yet, but it's got to be up there for the Chicago Bears, knowing what their 2025 opponents are. But 8-9 in your first year after you had the number one overall pick in Caleb Williams, and you win what? What was the Bears' record this year? 4-13, 5-12. Yeah. So coming just underneath of doubling your wins would be great. It would be really great to be able to come in and double your wins like that. Darby, let me know in the comments how my sound is. Am I too loud? Am I too quiet? My mic is just like, constantly adjusting, and it's been doing it all show. I just want to make sure that that we're good here. He said wrecked. Yeah. Bears fans are acting absolutely disgusting, and I just don't understand it. So yes, Ben Johnson has been hired by the Bears as head coach. Lions fans acting like absolute losers about it. He went to a divisional opponent. So what? It's business. Sorry that your divisional opponent had the best head coaching vacancy. He didn't bail on the damn team. It's not like he didn't have his heart in it, doing to him not knowing how he was knowing he was taking the Bears job. You just got outplayed by Washington. Washington came to play. You didn't. Jared Goff threw 4 interceptions, one of which was an awful pick 6. That's on Ben Johnson, right? Yeah, I get it because of the play calls. Yeah, I get it because Jameson Williams drops back to throw a pass. But to go so egregiously out of your way to say that he bailed should be ashamed of yourself, Lions fans. Act like you've been here before. This has been episode 90 of the NFL with AJL. I appreciate everybody for jumping into the podcast tonight on a snowy evening over here in Georgia. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're right here tapped in with us on the show. Please make sure to like and share that stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit the bell so you never miss a post. Again, we have reached 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Been pushing for this for a couple years since I came back on the show, really for years now since I've had the podcast, we have officially gotten to the threshold of being able to unlock full monetization. So make sure you comment, make sure you engage with us any way possible, especially the subscription. Even if you turn my videos on in the background, mute it and watch it, I don't care. I just need the watch hours from you beautiful people, and we are getting there. The QR code is every bit of social media. Lord, there we go. The QR code is every bit of social media and podcast content at the NFL with AJL on all social media platforms. If you can't find me, you're simply not looking hard enough. Again, shout out to Felix, my editor that I just recently hired in order for us to be able to push out those short form clips about at least every other day is what we're looking for. You know, I prayed for this moment to be able to get here to hire an editor for someone to really take that workload off me, because making shorts is just so mentally taxing. But I can give you guys a podcast right here full speed. I can give you guys the long form and medium form clips full speed, no problem. But I would love for you guys to go and engage with that over there. And as always, we're sponsored by Buy and Sell with AJL for all your worldwide professional real estate needs. Whether you're looking to buy a home or invest in real estate, this is the real estate team that you need to be working with. Check them out on social media at Buy and Sell with AJL or Adam Lewis _24. They'll be able to help you out with a great way in real estate. You can get on their monthly neighborhood market report, monthly newsletter, value emails. They just launched a real estate meetup back in September to where they're really being able to help clients at a high level, building a network, building a community of resources for you to be able to score your first or next potential real estate deal. And as always, we're sponsored by PrayStation Online. You can see the hat right there. The best gaming and faith worship Christian collaboration that's out there. It is the Praying Hands with the PlayStation colors on it. Use code AJL at checkout if you want to buy any merchandise, whether it's a hat, a hoodie, a shirt, sweats, sticker, any type of branding that you want this logo on. Those guys can absolutely, there we go. Those guys can absolutely hook you up at PrayStation Online. I need to make another lower third graphic for us. Again, guys, thank you so much for getting us to 1,000 subs. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're right here tapped in with me. And that's all I could ask you guys for, really. That is all I could ask you guys for here on the show. If you want to get a super chat, a super like, a super thanks, that's even more appreciated, to monetarily donate. You can DM me on social media at the NFL with AJL if you want to sort something out there. Keep YouTube's hands, keep some of these other streaming platforms' hands out of it. But no matter what you do, even if it's just a free watch with your eyes, that's all I can ask you guys for. Let's go ahead and get into the NFL divisional round as we're going to recap all 4 games from the weekend. And this is probably the most NFL I've talked on the show in a while, but I watched every snap of these 4 games this weekend. I was very tapped in, and we're going to start off the top with the Texans falling to the Chiefs 14-23. 23-14 is really the technical way that you should say it, in Arrowhead, as Kansas City now goes to their 7th straight AFC championship game. The quest for the three-peat is very much alive, and this was kind of disappointing from the Texans. People say that the Texans played well, but I don't think that they played that well. I just don't. I want to start off the top with the horrible reffing, okay? The calls for Kansas City are getting ridiculous at this point. They've been ridiculous all season long. And knowing that this game was another example of that, I mean, people want to get out here and try to defend, oh, the defenders' helmets clanked with each other. The official was back behind him. He had to throw the flag. Okay, maybe so, but you can pick it up. You can have New York come in and say, no, that's not helmet to helmet. That was an egregious call right there. That was ridiculous. The replay clearly showed that Mahomes slid underneath and the players collided with each other. Some people, a lot of people, didn't like the pass interference call on Will Anderson. I kind of thought that was justified. Still didn't like it as well. But with Mahomes' head popping back, I kind of understand it. You have a liability as an NFL referee to throw the flag. And that I can understand. But the reffing in the game, the favoritism for the Chiefs, was just bad, man. They had to play not the Zebras, but obviously they outgained Kansas City 336 to 212. They outpassed them 187-162. They outrushed them by 99 yards, 149 to 50. They out yards per play them by a whole yard, 5.2 to 4.2. More first downs, better on third down, 10 of 17 versus 4 of 11 for Kansas City. 65 total plays, but here's the damning thing. You allow 8 sacks. You have 8 penalties for 92 yards. You even win the time of possession battle. But when you see how the game started out for Kansas City, the last way that the Texans wanted it, the very last possible way they envisioned it / wanted this to start out, was letting Kansas City run the opening kickoff back almost. In Arrowhead, you put the crowd all the way in the game. You don't allow your fans that traveled to actually roar in the stadium because the red and yellow freaks are right there. They are raising it up. They are in Arrowhead. They are cheering on Kansas City. I mean, 50 rushing yards? That's pretty remarkable of the Texans defense. I will admit the Texans defense holding Kansas City to 212 total yards. I don't know exactly how low that ranks for Kansas City, but that's got to be low, right? It's got to be very low. You don't turn the ball over at all as the Texans, and you still can't come away with it. So maybe the Texans did do a good job, defensively holding Kansas. I mean, 212 yards, that's not going to win you many, if really any playoff games. But when you let your quarterback get sacked 8 times, when you have 8 penalties for 92 yards, when you have Stephon Diggs, who's been absent all year because of, the ACL injury, when you have Tank Dell, who gets hurt in the last matchup, I want to say when they played Kansas City, and, he hurts his other leg, that's heartbreaking. That's absolutely heartbreaking. And to know that it was Nico Collins and Xavier Hutchinson and some of these other makeshift wide receivers, you have a Dalton Schultz, you have a Joe Mixon. So they did what they could, to spread the ball around. CJ Stroud, 19 of 28, 245 yards. Joe Mixon had a solid game, 5 yards a carry, 18 carries, 88 yards. But after that, it was CJ Stroud, 6 carries of 42 yards. Nico Collins, 5 catches for 81. Dalton Schultz, 4 for 63. Even Xavier Hutchinson, 4 for 52. John Mechie, 2 for 35. So they were getting some production out there, but they just weren't able to string these drives together. And I think that's a big testament to Steve Spagnuolo, right? Probably the best defensive coordinator in the league next to Vic Fangio, and rightfully so. You know what I mean? Vic Fangio is a very, very good defensive coordinator. I was baffled when the Dolphins moved off of him, and now the Eagles have the best secondary in the league, and they arguably have the best defensive line, the best pass rush in the league as well. That's just what Vic Fangio does. Travis Kelce with a very vintage game, 7 catches, 117 yards, and a touchdown. You can't say anything less about Travis. Congratulations to him and Taylor Swift getting engaged here lately as well. 16.7 yards per catch is just something that you really can't have. And I'll just come out and say this too. The Chiefs weren't good, but they played well situationally because, again, they were outgained. They were worse on third down. They lost a time of possession battle, but they got to the quarterback more, and they made less mistakes penalty-wise. And again, if you lose time of possession, that's usually pretty tough to be able to win. Usually pretty tough. But they did it. Andy Reid's a freak. Patrick Mahomes is one of the GOATs. And the Chiefs defense really kept them in this one. And that's okay to say, right? Steve Spagnuolo is great. He's probably the best defensive coordinator in the league next to Vic Fangio. And say what you want to say about Aaron Glenn, but he just gave up 45 at home. I'll say it again. He just gave up 45 at home. So shout out to the Chiefs. The three-peat is very much alive. They beat the Texans in the divisional 23-14. They're undefeated in the divisional round. They have never not went to the AFC Championship game. We're watching the dynasty continue in front of us, guys. So let's just call it what it is. You see a post from 2019 when the Chiefs are playing the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. Who does America want to win this game? Everybody wants Kansas City, besides New England. They want New England. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And that's what Kansas City now is. And that's in a good way for the fans, right? I like seeing Kansas City do what they do. Do I want them to be in another Super Bowl? No. But am I going to bitch as a fan when I watch the first ever three-peat in NFL history happen? No, because it's going to be good for the game. Now, the calls to get them there are questionable. Weirdest 15-win team I've ever seen. And Andy Reid in this game, I said it, Reid and Mahomes, they're going to break out, another 40, 50% of the playbook that they've been hiding from everybody all year because they got Hollywood Brown, they got Xavier Worthy, they've got Pacheco, they've got Mahomes, they've got Travis Kelce. But they didn't. They had 212 total yards of offense. So next week against the Bills, which we'll have the prediction on Friday, we'll see how that actually plays out. The Commanders somewhat blow out the Detroit Lions 45-31, and this was for sure the biggest surprise of the divisional weekend because I hated the fact that the Commanders had to run into the buzzsaw in Detroit. I did. But now the Commanders have won 14 total games this season. They feel great after coming off the last-second win against the Bucs, which everything could change that, right? They doink it off and we're having they doink it off the post and we're having a different conversation. But that's not what happened. The Washington Commanders absolutely dominated this game from start to finish just about. Lions are up 7-3, but then you allow the Commanders a 28-point second quarter and a 14-point fourth quarter. The game was won there. The game was won in the second half of each half. in the second quarter and in the fourth quarter. Jaden Daniels is so special. I mean, 22 of 31, 200. I'm going to give him to him. 300 yards, 2 tubs. Brian Robinson, 15 carries, 77 yards, 2 tubs. Diami Brown, 6 catches for 98 yards. I mean, you don't even really get the big-time game from Terry McLaurin. Yes, 4 catches, 87 yards, 22 yards a catch, 1 touchdown. That's great. You have Zach Ertz, who's able to perform as well. But Jaden Daniels is arguably already a top 5 quarterback in this league, guys. Let's just call it what it is. Jaden is so freaking special, man. And as I saw him going through college, working his way up draft boards, I'm like, how can this guy not be a top 3 pick, a top 2, not 2 pick? I think the second overall was fair. But if the Bears had to go back and change it, they'd take Jaden in hindsight. Or maybe they would keep Caleb, right? You don't maybe want to think that they would switch everything up. But Jared Goff was very rough. 23 of 40, 313 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. Excuse me. He had 3 picks and he had a fumble. So 4 total turnovers for him. Jahmyr Gibbs had a hell of a day. 14 carries, 105 yards, 7.5 yards a carry. You know, Amon-Ra had 8 for 137. Jahmyr Gibbs had 6 for 70. So Jahmyr came out and you know, had a 175-yard showing in a playoff game. And that's nothing to scoff at, right? He was able to spread the ball around. Khalif Raymond, 3 for 37. Tim Patrick, 1 for 22. Even Jameson Williams, 1 catch, only 19 yards. But it's hard. It's very hard to see the Lions go out this way. It is. But Jaden Daniels, again, he is just so special. First rookie quarterback ever with 300-plus total yards in each of his first 2 playoff games. The kid is unstoppable on the ground. You know, you have people calling for Goff's job and his starting position because Jaden Daniels is such a beast. And they're like, he's a statue. He can't move around. Get real, Lions fans. He's never been able to move around. He's never been able to. So get off that. You really think Teddy Bridgewater or Hendon Hooker would have gave you a better shot in this game? Cry me a river, build a bridge, get over it, tear the bridge down, and go to next season. It's what happens when you're good. Losing sucks. You compare yourself a lot. You think as a couch fan, you know it all. You think as a couch GM, a couch scout, that you know it all. And I'm not talking shit because I'm sitting here in a chair doing a podcast, but I know what the hell I'm talking about. No, I don't have prior coaching experience. No, I don't have prior NFL or college football experience, but I've been watching a game for 20 years. It's not hard to dissect it and call it what it is. Y'all see the jersey? Y'all see the memorabilia of New Orleans? You don't think I know how sickening it is to lose in a playoff game? You don't think I know how sickening it is to have your franchise be one of the worst in the league until you turn it around? And I like the Lions come up. I like their story. It reminds me a lot of New Orleans. I mean, the fact that Dan Campbell was a player on the 0-16 squad and now has taken this team to great heights, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So calm it down a little bit. I think it's really unfair to say that Jared Goff doesn't deserve to be on this team anymore, that you need to go find another quarterback. That's blasphemous to me. And yeah, it's probably going to get even more magnified when Ben Johnson's not there, because who's going to be our next offensive coordinator? That will be left to be desired. People saying it's the same old Lions. Get out of your feelings. Get the hell out of your feelings. You just had the number 1 seed, which you didn't have last year. Or excuse me, you just had the number 1 seed. You won 15 games and only lost 2. You had the number 1 offense in the league. And even with all of that, knowing that you had 15 defensive players on IR, not having Hutch, not having Davis, not having McNeil, it really showed its ugly head. Not being able to rally Jaden Daniels whatsoever is clearly a defensive scheme that Aaron Glenn inherited from Dennis Allen when he was in New Orleans. Aaron Glenn's defense clearly cannot handle mobile quarterbacks. Again, he just gave up 45 points at home. You got busted on a big screen play by Terry McLaurin. I mean, what else is there to draw from the conclusion of that? You just got outplayed. It's okay. You get better because of these losses, right? You get better because of them. Iron sharpens iron. You're not meant to have easy wins the whole time. 15 wins in a season, that feels easy. You already got away with Jared Goff throwing 4 or 5 interceptions earlier in the year. I think it was against the Texans, and you still somehow win. So let the air out of the balloon a little bit. Breathe. It's going to be okay. Yeah, you might fall to 12 or 13 or 11 wins next year and not have to get the 1 seed. But guess what? The 1 seed, I feel like, is a curse sometimes. The Chiefs look rough off their bye. Y'all looked horrible off your bye. You get better from this, Lions fans. It's okay. It's okay. But let me go ahead and give this props to Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury, man. I mean, they're just so magical. Washington in the NFC Championship game for the first time in 33 years. Didn't think it was possible whatsoever. I'm going to just be 100 with you because the Lions were a buzzsaw. They were. And even though that they had 15 players on IR, they were still doing what they could. Now, yes, could Hutch, could Davis, could McNeil have really made a difference? Absolutely. Could maybe even Marcus Davenport had a difference? Sure. Not really going to buy in on it, but sure. But they weren't there. And now you have to learn to stay healthier. You have to learn to weather this storm and give the reins to Washington for this year. They are in the NFC Championship game, and they deserved it. Washington fans are on top of the world. I'm happy for Washington fans, man. I love when a team can not only get sold to the rightful people, but they have a banger of an offseason. I mean, their three best moves were Quinn, Cliff, and Jaden by far. You double it down, you triple it down with Austin Eckler, Zach Ertz, Bobby Wagner. I mean, it's, Mike Sainristil still from Michigan is absolutely emerging as one of the best defensive secondary players, and he's a rookie. The future is as bright as it can be in Washington. You got to love the 28-point second quarter for Washington as well. 42 points combined, which was the most in postseason history for a second quarter between the Lions and the Commanders. I think the worst call of the game was the stupid call from Ben Johnson. You're down by 10, 12 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and you call for Jameson Williams to throw a pass? What? It was a horrible throw into double coverage. That's on coaching. That's freaking awful situationally. And that right there kind of put the dagger in the coffin for Detroit. And again, man, I hate that because why lose on such boneheaded mistakes? Because Dan Campbell coming out doing an onside kick earlier in the fourth quarter. Oh, I felt like we could get it. I felt like we were going to be okay. Stop rolling the dice, Dan. Stop pushing the chips to the middle of the table. Stop going all in. I get that's what your culture is really built on and, you know, what this team is really going to thrive on. But you've seen now it cost you a 17-point lead in the NFC Championship. It cost you the chance to go to a second straight NFC Championship. And at some point, you have to temper your character a little bit because you just got blasted at home by a rookie, 45 points. Cliff Kingsbury was a failed head coach, and now he's one of the best OCs in the league. Last time Dan Quinn was a head coach, it was rough for him in Atlanta. And these guys are pulling it all together. So, Dan, look in the mirror, brother. You're great. You're elite. You're cream of the crop. Everybody will be blessed to have you, whether you're a head coach, coaching staff, whatever. I miss you so much in New Orleans. Same with Aaron Glenn. I won't even get started on that there. But that's on coaching, man. The Lions are about 85-90% there situationally. But it's that 10 to 15% where Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell get really boneheaded. And they just don't know what to do with themselves. And that showed in this one. So clap it up for Commanders fans. Absolutely clap it up for them. They somewhat blow out the Lions 45-31. I mean, screw it. They blew the Lions out. All right, I would just call it what it is. The game is over. I turned the game off after they put up the 45th point because it was done. It was done. I'm sorry, but it was done. NFC Championship game for the first time in 33 years. I love Jalen Hurts. I love the Eagles. So I don't know who I'm rooting for yet. I don't know my pick yet. But Washington's got a chance, I'll tell you that. I love Washington's story. I love my boy Jalen Hurts. I'm still waiting for everybody to give him his respect. So it'll be a great NFC Championship game. The Rams fall to the Eagles. The Eagles are able to escape the Rams. Crazy enough, 28-22. Felt like the Eagles were going to run away with this game as well. It's 28-15. You see the Rams come down the field. It feels like Matthew Stafford's going to have another clutch game-winning drive, and it's going to be in the playoffs. The insane throws to Puka Nacua later in this one. The fact that he had 324 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have some fumbles in this one. The snow really did play into Philly's advantage. And Jalen Hurts, 15 of 20, 128 yards. But Saquon Barkley, 26 carries for 205 yards and 2 touchdowns. Both of these teams were really gashed on the run game. Philly ran for 285. Well, not really gashed. Philly ran for 285, which is absolutely ridiculous, with only 65 net passing yards because Jalen Hurts took bad sacks in this one, had a chance for the check down and the safety, and he looked horrible in it. The snow was clearly a factor. But when you take as many sacks as you do and only have 65 net passing yards, you're giving up 402 total yards defensively. Vic Fangio, we see that, brother. Both teams had 5.7 yards per play. Vic Fangio, we see that, brother. We do. Both teams rough on third down. Both teams okay on fourth down. 70 total plays ran for the Rams. So you knew that, Philly defense was going to get tired. 7 sacks allowed by the Eagles. Now 5 sacks allowed by the Rams as well. Only 6 total penalties for a total of 44 total yards in this game, but the Rams lost the time of possession battle barely. They lost the turnover battle barely. And I think that's why ultimately this game slipped away from them. The Rams have now given up 4 60-plus yard rushing touchdowns to Saquon Barkley alone in their 2 matchups. Gashed them the other game that they had, I think, for 250-plus. Saquon runs for another 200-plus. I mean, Saquon Barkley is the best running back in the NFL, and it's not particularly close. It's not. It was very criminal how he was handled in New York, and I think we all understand that. And Derrick Henry is a close second, but Saquon Barkley is the best running back in the NFL. And the fact that he's behind the best offensive line in the NFL is a great testament to that as well. I thought Philly's secondary was playing really scrappy all night long. Again, this is the best secondary in the league. If you want to take your pick at Reed Blankenship, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, CD, CJ Gardner-Johnson. I mean, take your pick. And then you look at the freaking front 7. Nakobe Dean, Zach Bond. Huh. Zach freaking Bond. Screw you, Dennis Allen. Zach Bond is a monster. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, all of the defensive talent on the line. I mean, just Nolan Smith, Josh Sweat. Probably the best defense left in the playoffs. And it's up there with the Chiefs, of course. Steve Spagnuolo is ridiculous, but you have the 2 best defenses, the 2 best defensive coordinators left in this one, and Philly's definitely helping take the cake on that. I thought the snow, definitely went in Philly's favor. It was a slippery ball for both teams, but especially by the Rams. You had 3 fumbles specifically by LA, 2 of them lost. And Philly was just used to this type of weather. The Rams were not. But you could come in and argue the same for the Rams. 16 sacks and counting in the 2 playoff games that they actually played in this season. It was the first time ever for a team to have 7+ sacks in back-to-back playoff games. Already 5th most all time in sacks in the playoffs. Just through 2 rounds. Obviously, they won't be playing anymore since they lost to the Eagles in this one. I thought it was pretty confusing, though. Taking the ball out of Saquon Barkley's hands on second down before LA got the ball back was pretty weird. Jalen Hurts takes an awful sack for a big loss. Jalen Hurts looks horrible taking a safety for a big loss when he could have checked it down. Now, I understand the defender was, free rushing right into his face. I get that, but he had time. You got to be quicker when your back is on your goal line. You do. And I'm not going to let Philly off the hook for the questionable situational football. Defense bends. They let LA score. They have a bad offensive drive afterwards. You give the ball back to LA. And the defense damn near allows LA to take the lead after being up 13 points with just a few minutes left in this game. So Nick Sirianni, Kellen Moore, Vic Fangio, I see you, brother. No. You ain't hiding from me. You ain't hiding from me. I see you, boy. I see you. The whole league sees this. Washington sees this. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because Dan Quinn is that defensive guy. For sure. So don't get it twisted now. I like y'all a lot. I'm kind of rooting for y'all this weekend. Really rooting for Washington, too. But I love my boy Jalen Hurts. And the way that Saquon Barkley is just looking with him, man, is chef's kiss. I mean, Saquon literally looked at him and said, watch this. And he took off for a 76-yard scamper. But I'm not letting you off the hook, Philly. That was very questionable situational football. And you almost let Matthew Stafford, the king of comebacks, have another king of a comeback. And we'd be having a different conversation about you and Nick Sirianni and Vic Fangio and Jalen Hurts and everybody, because this is the best team that Philadelphia has had in recent years. This is better than the Super Bowl team, if you ask me. And you're probably wondering, how could that even get any better? Jalen Hurts had an MVP year. Well, the league has caught on to Jalen. He is now at a point to where I don't think he's elite. I do believe Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. I don't believe he's elite at all. And he's just above a game manager, but he's just below us. Like he's just above game manager, but still notably below superhero. Like I kind of already think Jaden Daniels is better. I just think he's very talented. You know, Josh Allen outdoes him. Burrow outdoes him. Mahomes outdoes him, at least quarterback-wise. Now, if you want to get into the whole quarterback wins and everything, Philly, I'll have the best GM in the league, okay? I feel like Howie Roseman is such a coveted piece of y'all's franchise and organization because he keeps it simple. I mean, people want to make jokes about him picking from Georgia, but for God's sake, half of that defense are Bulldogs. And they are playing like the Bulldogs that they were known to be in college. You get Saquon. You get Devontae. You trade for A.J. Brown. You make Jalen successful. You bring in a great offensive line. You have Dallas Goedert. I mean, this team is loaded. But it doesn't mean that Jalen Hurts is the weak link. Again, I think Jalen is a step above game manager, but noticeably below superhero. I don't think Jalen can necessarily win you a game more times than not, but most of the time he won't lose you a game, if that kind of makes sense for the context there. But Philly fans, I want to hear from you. Get in the chat, get in the comments. Let me know what you think about Jalen Hurts' performance, about you guys going to the NFC Championship game. Do you think you're going to win? Do you think it's going to be a Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl like the Super Bowl logo for New Orleans is so desperately screaming to us? Is it going to be Bills and Commanders? Is it going to be Chiefs and Eagles? Who knows? We will have it play out. The Baltimore Ravens, man. The Baltimore Ravens continue to disappoint me year in and year out. But even though they were in the chance to win this game, even though Lamar Jackson played his ass off and arguably outplayed Josh Allen, it doesn't change the fact of his turnovers. It doesn't change the fact of his bad interception, whether it was timing or not. You still gave the ball away, arm punt, whatever. It doesn't change the fact that he was holding the football very loosely, and the fumble really fell on his shoulders very roughly. Derrick Henry, again, when you don't give Derrick Henry the ball 20 times, the Ravens lose. Derrick Henry touched the ball 16 times. When Derrick Henry doesn't run for 90 yards, the Ravens lose. Derrick Henry ran for 84 yards. Your leading receiver was Isaiah Likely. I kind of think Baltimore needs one more weapon. I really think they do. And of course, not having Zay Flowers was very tough. It was very, very tough. He's missing he missed the 2024 playoffs. What's it called? With the knee injury that he suffered in the regular season finale. And that sucks, because I think Zay Flowers is really special. I thought Zay Flowers at Boston College was very good. That was my zipper scraping up on the chair. I didn't just pass gas on the show, guys. Zay Flowers was great at Boston College. And I believe he's a great option for Lamar Jackson. I like Rashad Bateman. I love the fact that Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are now having this kind of best tight end tandem in the league type of vibe. Two of your three top receivers were your tight ends, not only in Isaiah Likely, but Mark Andrews. And, we'll have some words about Mark Andrews here in a minute and how they, weren't able to come away with this one. And it was tough, right? Because even though you have all those turnovers, Lamar still leaves the field. Lamar still delivered his final play out of his throwing arm with a chance for them to tie it. And it's not his fault that Mark Andrews dropped the ball. It's not. Mark Andrews has had 321 connections with Lamar Jackson. That's more than 361 connections between the two of him. That's double more than any other receiver Lamar Jackson's thrown to. Would you know that Mark Andrews has not fumbled since 2019? That's how rare it was. Rarefied air. To know that it came down to literally a matter of plays. And that's this league, right? It's a game of inches. It's a game of situations. And unfortunately, the Ravens just didn't perform in those big moments. The Bills haven't lost at home all year. They are now 10-0, including the postseason. And, this was a battle of MVP quarterbacks. I did clearly think that Lamar was the better one here, although Josh did have his fair share of great plays as well. I said that turnovers and the weather could decide this game, and it very much so looked like that it did. Baltimore with the best rushing offense coming in. So, I was really going to be shocked if the team doesn't win it all, or at least go. They get stopped in the divisional round, and that's a very big disappointment for them. Derrick Henry had a really big wide open drop on the first drive by Baltimore, but Lamar said, no problem. I'll deliver some strikes to Isaiah Likely and then Bateman for the touchdown, and that's what they did. Buffalo comes out with an 11-play touchdown drive, 9 of those plays being runs, and you got to love that Buffalo has found such a great offensive system. The fact that James Cook is exploding, the fact that Josh Allen complements him very well, not only as a passer, but a rusher too. And I kept an eye on that all game. I was like, okay, all right, but Buffalo's going to play Ravens game a little bit. And sure enough, when you come out and James Cook has 17 carries for 67 yards, when Josh Allen has 2 rushing touchdowns, albeit it's 10 carries for 20 yards, when they come out and they put up 147 rushing yards compared to 176 for the Ravens, the fact that Ravens put up 416 total yards and Buffalo was still able to escape with the win, Buffalo gave up 7 yards per play and still escaped with the win. So that's not very sustainable, right? And it shows you that even though the Ravens did things bad, when it came down to it, they still had a chance to win the football game. But when you fumble twice and you throw an ugly pick and you lose the time of possession battle and you have more penalties and you take more sacks, oddly enough, Baltimore didn't punt in this game. That is going to be the recipe for you to not be able to get out of the divisional round. At very early in this game, Baltimore became the first team ever to have a 1,000-yard and a 2,000-yard rusher. Includes regular and postseason for Lamar and Derrick Henry. Lamar had 1,000. Henry had over 2,000 in terms of rushing yards this year. And we know, again, best rushing attack in the NFL. And then Buffalo is the only team ever with 30-plus passing and 30-plus rushing touchdowns each in a season for a team collectively. So it was a truly special matchup, albeit, they've been eliminated in the last 3 divisional matchups, talking about Buffalo. First AFC Championship game since 2020. And Lamar throwing the interception again. It was just a lot of rare things and mistakes that didn't really happen that much in the season. Third interception in the last 13 games for Lamar Jackson. Again, he had a 10-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio this year. Buffalo didn't do anything with it, but then he gets strip sack. Lamar does and almost gets ran back. And now Lamar Jackson has 4 postseason games with 2+ turnovers in 8 playoff starts. It's bad. Lamar Jackson is a sub-500 quarterback in the playoffs. And if he wins, almost when he wins the 3rd MVP, that's going to rarefy his air even more, but also not nullify the fact that he can't get it done in the playoffs when it matters most. Again, 4 postseason games with 2+ turnovers in 8 starts. Buffalo's 3rd touchdown drive, 7 rushes, 2 passes, all 21 first half points came off rushing touchdowns. If you told me coming into this game that the Ravens did this, I would have believed you. But Buffalo was taking their play style and just absolutely punishing the Ravens with it, even though they didn't outrush them. They held Derrick to under 20 carries, and they held Derrick to under 90 yards. And the rest was really history. I mean, Buffalo was kind of forcing Lamar to be a superhero. And, I'm not going to come down and, as a lot of people want to say, oh, we're laying it all at Lamar Jackson's feet. This is all him. His 2 turnovers win the first half. Again, he left the field doing everything right. The final pass he threw in the game to Mark Andrews was great. Was it perfect? No. But Andrews bobbled it about 2 or 3 times before he dropped it. That's not on Lamar. It's not. They were shutting down Derrick Henry, which is a great testament to what Buffalo was able to do. And then you make Lamar kind of the leading rusher at that certain point in the game. I mean, let's just call it what it is. He wasn't your leading rusher, but at one point, Lamar was really starting to open things up in the rush game. Now, again, he only had 6 carries as well. You have 6, 12 plus 2, 24. 6, 12 plus 2, 14. You ran the ball 30 times in this game for 176 yards. So that's not horrible. That was actually fairly solid, but it wasn't timely, good situational, efficient runs. And again, you didn't make Derrick Henry enough of a compliment in this game. You didn't make him enough of a priority. And that is a big testament to the Bills. Don't get me wrong there. But the Ravens were 11-0 when Derrick Henry has 90-plus rushing yards. And here he came in the third quarter. But I knew Baltimore couldn't win without Derrick's presence. He finally was able to punch it in. Baltimore finally enforcing that run game, making it a 21-19 game. Outgaining Baltimore by 100 yards and 9 points in the third quarter, which is a really pivotal point for Baltimore in this one. And it was taking them a while to get going offensively until Derrick Henry became unleashed. Josh Allen had no rushes in the third quarter, which I thought kind of could have shot the Bills in the foot, and just about did. We really did get robbed of a great overtime divisional game into which Lamar and the Ravens could have won. Coulda, shoulda, woulda, if, whatever, right? Mark Andrews did drop the pass. You'll never win a playoff game with 3 turnovers. I don't care who you are. And that's a problem for Lamar. That is a problem for Baltimore. The Bills went 5 drives with 1 touchdown in the red zone versus the Broncos. They had 4 drives with 3 touchdowns against Baltimore, with the only non-touchdown being a field goal. So they scored every time they got in range. I thought it was a pretty smart decision to kick it and go up by 8, because if you don't, you leave it by, you're only up by 5. Baltimore is able to take the 1-point lead with a touchdown. You would have went for 2 to make it a 3-point game, to where you have to score a touchdown or at least get a field goal to tie it. You can't take the win easily. So nice situational kind of, chess match, chess versus checkers kind of thing there when the game came down to it. The Ravens did their job. Again, they did their job to score a touchdown. Mark Andrews bobbles a 2-point conversion. What a heartbreaker for Baltimore. Mark Andrews has had 4 drops all year. He had 2 in just this game. And obviously the fumble. Again, Lamar to Andrews, it's happened 361 times successfully. That's double more than any other receiver Lamar's thrown to. And Mark Andrews fumbles for the first time in 5-6 years. The fans can't help that. The franchise can't help that. Lamar can't help that. And Mark Andrews can't help that. But when you make one mistake every 5-6 years to the magnitude of a fumble, you got to give the guy some slack. It's still sickening because, again, we feel like we're robbed of an overtime game between these 2 great teams, which should have been the AFC Championship. But it is what it is. The rest is to be desired. So yet again, when Baltimore cannot get the offense rolling, when they cannot get Derrick Henry going, they can't get the offense rolling. We saw it a couple times this year. And when they finally decided to use Derrick Henry correctly in the midst of this season, they were freaking unstoppable. I want to hear y'all get in the comments. Let me know what you think of the Baltimore Ravens losing to the Buffalo Bills. Give me some takeaways on the divisional round down in the comments. That is episode 90, was episode 90 rather, of the NFL with AJL. I appreciate the heck out of everybody jumping into the show. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you were right here tapped in with me. Again, if you're in California experiencing the wildfires, I'm praying heavily for you guys. If you're down here in Georgia and on the East Coast experiencing Winter Storm Enzo, the polar vortex, the winter surge, whatever you want to call it, stay inside, stay warm. Those roads are going to be treacherous. Please, before we get out of here, y'all, please make sure to like and share the stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit the bell so you never miss a post. Please, please, please subscribe. Again, thank you so much for getting us to 1,000 subscribers. Y'all have so many options out there, so many choices, so much time to choose other places, and you make the NFL with AJL a part of your day religiously, and that's all I could ask you guys for. You can drop us a super chat, a super thanks, a super like, a super whatever to monetarily donate to the show. You can DM me on social media if you want to be able to, donate to the show as well. Maybe kind of keep the main platforms out of it. Don't forget that we are sponsored by PrayStation. We are sponsored by Buy and Sell with AJL for all your worldwide professional real estate needs. I am at the NFL with AJL on all social platforms. Again, we are rolling out the shorts. We are rolling out the TikToks. We will be back on Friday, more than likely, with an episode. Hope y'all enjoyed a super packed show of episode 90. We recapped the national championship, gave a little bit of thoughts on the 12-team format, chopped up the Saints head coaching search. Ben Johnson is now the head coach of the Bears, and we gave you our recap of the NFL divisional round. I am Adam J. Lewis, host of the NFL with AJL. This was episode 90. We'll be back with episode 91. I love the hell out of you guys. I appreciate y'all. I need y'all, and I